Hello, and welcome to an Arknights Operator's Mediocre guide featuring the snaky, snussy operator herself, Hulhaiek, who, if there existed a list of operators that Doctor has been in bed with, Hulhaiek would probably be right up there, next to Silver Ash. The Core Caster, one of the most basic of basic subclasses. They're deployed on range tiles and deal arts damage. That is as complicated as it gets. And from a simple description to another simple, easy to understand talent. When attacking airborne enemies, Hulhaiek's damage against them increases and drops a silence debuff lasting for 3 seconds. Now you might be thinking that's quite the niche condition for just a silence, but what if I told you that all the operator skills are able to inflict levitate in some way? Enemies under the levitate effect do count as being airborne, and therefore will also be silenced when it happens, making it much easier to stop those Hulhaiek haters from speaking heresy against thy queen. Oh sorry, thy queen. Anyways, the Snek's second talent applies a weightless debuff on all enemies within her attack range, as long as they have at least 80% of their health remaining. Not much to say about this skill other than it's quite the specific requirement. 80% just for some extra push and pulling power, but it is there if you want to try for any displacement shenanigans. Skill 1 buffs the next attack to 300% arts damage and attacks an extra target. In the case that there is no extra target, that one enemy will be levitated for up to 4 seconds. The skill can also hold 3 charges of itself. It's an alright skill. Skill 2, I'm kidding. At least the levitation happens more often than you think. Usually when an enemy freshly walks into range proccing the readied skill, all the other charges will follow, extending the levitation time on that one enemy. But if more enemies walk into range, you're kind of shit out of luck with your levitation plays. On top of that, the skill is activated automatically, so you are unable to strategically control when to strike at 2 enemies, or just levitating 1. But the skill's there, and at least it's not another generic stat buff. Dr. Banger's second skill lasts for 16 seconds and swaps the regular attack for a flurry of 9, each dealing up to 45% arts damage, and targeting random enemies within range. Additionally, each hit has a small chance of levitating the enemy for a second. Think of this skill as similar to Caster Omnia's skill 2, but it costs much less SP, can inflict levitate, and allows for control on when you activate it. Due to the random targeting nature, taking down a large group is probably not consistent both damage and crowd control wise, a minor inconvenience for the enemy if anything. And of course, if there's only one target to attack, it's not really random anymore, is it? Upping how common the levitations will happen on that one enemy. So you've got some stalling potential there, as well as a form of attack interrupting when an enemy is briefly levitated. And it's only a 30 SP skill, so don't be afraid to fire away. Hulhaiek's third skill for 45 seconds slows down her attacking, but extends her attack range and converts her normal attacks into 3 tornadoes that travel from one side where the operator is to the end. The tornadoes increase in damage the further they go, starting from 280% arts damage to 420. They also disappear when colliding with an enemy, levitating them briefly. What a cool looking skill this one is, and a fairly long range for a caster too. The tornadoes themselves travel fairly slow across, but spawning wise, you'll always get all 3 going regardless of where one enemy is, as long as they're in range. For this skill to be decently effective, you do need to watch your positioning, whether it's trying for the maximum distance damage scaling or covering as many tiles as possible with that long range. Some thought and setup is required for optimal plays. Additionally, this skill is the most consistent way to apply both levitation and silence with Hulhaiek, as it's not horribly conditional or based on chance. There's also a cool tech you can do if you want more than one tornado hitting an enemy at a time. Due to the Whirlwind's hitboxes being a full 1x1 tile, if you get an enemy standing on 2 tiles at once and line up your attacks right, you can get 2 tornadoes hitting the same enemy, effectively doubling the damage they take, just as long as nothing else is in the way beforehand. I'll make the module decision straightforward here. With the X module, you are granted a general damage boost via the 10 arts res ignore and extra damage when hitting airborne enemies. But the reason you'd probably want this is for the extended silence duration of 2 seconds for a total of 5, if you're really looking to shut down a particular silenceable enemy. With the Y module, your skills come back quicker given Hulhaiek is actually attacking the elites and above enemies. The second talent is made to be less restrictive on the weightlessness debuff, bringing down the requirements to enemies being at least 50% health. Some much needed breathing room for plays related to other operators. And you're even given a different debuff for when applying weightless is no longer possible. They just take more arts damage, always a welcome bonus. So, how do we use Hulhaic? Alright, let's rip off the bandage for this one. The Serpent herself is a little niche. The damage is on the weaker side, still noticeable amounts of damage, by far not the worst thing out there, but compared to many of the other arts damaging options, it tends to get fairly overshadowed. So we're mostly going to take a look at her levitation and silencing capabilities, two crowd control effects that you don't necessarily see that often. Creating the right scenario for Hulhaic skills is probably what you should be aiming for. For example, keeping the enemy count low and firing off skill 2 when trying to chain levitate a particular enemy, or not having random weaker enemies soak up a skill 3 tornado hit up close. If you can find a way to abuse levitatable tough enemies, it is something glorious to witness. Even if the levitation doesn't last long, the silence or attack interruptions might be crippling enough to take care of particular enemies. Situational, yeah, Hulhaic will likely not be in every clear you do, but finding that juicy opportunity will make you feel good if you pull it off. I will also address the fact that not every enemy is going to be vulnerable or even affected by levitation, and due to the Serpent's first talent being how it is, that also means you're not getting your silences off either. Speaking of niche, integrated strategies. Crank up that attack speed and fire off the skill 3. You won't regret it. And finally, here are Hulhaic stats, potentials, trust bonus, base skills, and my E264M5 Hulhaic. Ready to dig up proof of Doctor's, important files. And that was the Hulhaic guide. If you do decide to get her upgraded, she will likely lift up your enjoyment of the game, or have you down bad for the operator. Either way, you're probably having fun.